The city lights of Kansas City flickered in the October darkness, a living pulse that always seemed to beat faster after a Chiefs victory. Tonight, the glow from Arrowhead Stadium rolled out into the streets, and nowhere was it brighter than at 1587 Prime. The steakhouse, normally a favorite for post-game crowds, seemed to hum with something extra. Maybe it was the win itself, hard-earned and thrilling, or maybe it was the sight of the city's favorite tight end walking in, hand in hand with a woman whose songs had filled stadiums far bigger than Arrowhead. Travis Kelce entered the restaurant with the kind of easy swagger that's impossible to fake. After a game, he always seemed to radiate a sort of contented energy. The tension of competition dissolved, but not forgotten. Tonight, though, that energy was dialed up. His smile a little wider, his posture a little looser. The reason was clear the moment Taylor Swift stepped beside him. Her presence as electric as any stadium lights. She wore an outfit designed for the night. Black with a hint of sparkle, understated and yet absolutely arresting when she moved. Her hair was swept up, a few strands catching the light, and her face glowed with the kind of happiness that needs no explanation. The two of them together drew every eye in the room, not because they sought attention, but because the warmth between them was palpable. Inside, the private dining room had been transformed into something like a living room, the kind that only exists in the best memories. There were teammates, Patrick Mahomes, still in his lucky socks, and Chris Jones, already holding court with a story. There were family, Kelce's mother, Donna, beaming with pride, and a couple of Taylor's closest friends whose laughter mingled easily with the rest. The table by the window was scattered with plates and glasses, not an untouched dish in sight. And the mood was set by a playlist that somehow balanced Motown classics and a few Swift deep cuts that only the closest fans would recognize. In this space, phones disappeared into pockets and purses. The conversation was unhurried, the stories growing taller with each retelling. Travis, ever the host, made sure everyone's glass was full. Taylor, quietly attentive, leaned in to listen, her laughter ringing out whenever someone landed a punchline. The couple moved through the night in sync, finishing each other's sentences, sharing a secret smile after every inside joke. At some point, someone called for a toast. It wasn't a grand orchestrated affair, just Travis raising his glass with a grin, and Taylor matching his gesture with a sparkle in her eyes. The words weren't rehearsed, but they didn't need to be. In that moment, the room felt smaller, the city outside quieter, as if the entire night hinged on their shared happiness. To the team, Travis began, and to the people who make all of this worth it, Taylor added, and to victories on the field and off. There were cheers, clinks of glasses, and applause that felt as genuine as any encore. For a moment, the world outside didn't matter. All that existed was the circle of friends, the warmth of the room, and the unmistakable sense that something special was happening. What struck everyone who watched them that night wasn't a grand romantic gesture, but the small, almost invisible moments that said more than words. Travis, in the middle of a story, would reach across the table and find Taylor's hand. She, in turn, would squeeze back or lean in closer, listening with an intensity that made even the silliest anecdotes feel important. When a teammate tried to roast Travis for a missed play, Taylor was the first to defend him, her tone playfully sharp. "He made up for it in the fourth quarter," she teased, and the table erupted in laughter. Travis just shook his head, grinning, clearly delighted to have her in his corner. The energy between them was effortless, the kind that can't be faked for cameras or crowds. There was no need to perform. Their happiness was real, and it radiated out, making everyone at the table feel like they'd won something too. Dessert arrived in the form of a surprise birthday cake for a friend. The lights dimmed, the staff sang an off-key rendition of Happy Birthday, and Taylor, ever the performer, applauded the baker with a dramatic flourish. Travis joined in, his laughter echoing hers. The moment was silly, spontaneous, and absolutely perfect. Later, as the plates were cleared and the night wound down, the couple slipped away from the table for a quiet moment near the window. The city stretched out beyond the glass, its lights reflected in their eyes. They talked in hushed tones, their heads close together, oblivious to the world. For those who caught a glimpse, it was clear. This was no ordinary relationship. This was a partnership built on mutual respect, shared joy, and the kind of affection that only grows in private, unguarded moments. As midnight approached, the group began to disperse. Hugs were exchanged, promises made to meet up again soon. Travis and Taylor lingered, the last to leave. At the doorway, they paused to say goodnight, thanking the staff and waving to friends. There was no rush, no need to escape the spotlight. They moved together, side by side, their steps perfectly matched. Outside, the city was quiet. The air was cool, the sky clear. Travis slipped his arm around Taylor's waist, and she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. They walked away from the restaurant, not as celebrities, but as two people genuinely happy just to be with each other. For those who had been there, and even for those who only heard the stories later, the image of Travis and Taylor that night lingered long after the last glass was cleared. It wasn't the clothes they wore or the fact that they were the center of attention. It was the way they looked at each other, the easy smiles, the shared glances, the comfort of two people perfectly at home together. In a world obsessed with spectacle, their night was something else entirely. It was intimate, authentic, and full of the small, shining moments that make life feel extraordinary. The Chiefs had won, the city was alive, but the real victory belonged to two people who, in the midst of all the celebration, found their greatest joy in simply being together. As dawn crept over Kansas City, the city would wake to headlines about the game, stats and highlights and analysts breaking down every play. But for those who had seen it firsthand, the real story was written not in touchdowns or toasts, but in the quiet moments after the final whistle. The night at 1587 Prime would become one of those rare memories people return to again and again, the kind that glows a little brighter in the telling. It's easy to get caught up in the noise of fame and fandom, to see only the surface of glittering lives. But on this night, beneath the restaurant's soft lights and the city's echoing cheers, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift offered a different kind of story. One that wasn't about being the center of attention, but about sharing it. About finding joy in the moment and in each other. And that, more than any victory on the field, was what made the night unforgettable. The city would talk about it for weeks, not for the spectacle, but for the unmistakable sense that something real, something rare, had happened. The kind of night that reminds everyone, whether they're a superstar or a fan in the stands, that sometimes the best celebrations are the ones shared quietly, with the people who matter most. The lights of Kansas City would fade, but the afterglow of that night at 1587 Prime lingered. Proof that, every so often, real magic happens when the game is over and the world is watching. But all that really matters is the person beside you,